too, wasn't it? Okay.
No, it was
No,
not.
that's
Yeah,
it.
that came after.
Should I read it? I mean, should I
Uh,
notice it as a letter or wait
I'm
till?
gonna let you have, that's your choice.
Okay,
All
I
right, so
will.
it's 7 o'clock, and I would love to call this meeting to order. And this is the, this is our February, getting into like the stream of things, like meeting. And Judy, if you can call it to order.
Yes, indeed. Hausch,
I'm here.
McQueen. Here. Stokes.
Here.
Krieger.
Present.
Corliss.
Here.
Also present, Chief Carlson, Finance Director Colleen Harris, Public Works Director Johnny Burns, Planning and Zoning Administrator Denise Swinger, and Village Manager Mr. Salmeron.
All right, thank you. And I guess we've got announcements to begin with. Any announcements?
Yes, I have 3 announcements. One, I want to acknowledge that on Saturday, we had the quarterly repair cafe at the Bryan Center Gym, which is now co-sponsored by the Environmental Commission and the hardware store. And I believe it was quite a success. I saw Judy there with her vacuum cleaner. And many other people there with various sorts of things to be repaired.
there.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, there he is.
That's me
Also, I
pretending
want
it's
to announce that the Environmental Commission, which normally meets on the third Thursday, will not be meeting this Thursday because we're missing half of our environmental team, some of whom are out of the country. And last, and certainly not least, I would like to acknowledge for the village government the Oscar Award to Steve Bognar and Julia Reichart for Best Feature Documentary.
Yeah, that was so awesome.
And hopefully they are now at home relaxing after a very strenuous few years, I think.
Nice,
That's all.
nice announcements. Any other announcements?
Are you
Kevin?
Yes.
Oh, Laura.
It's not
Yeah.
too early to think about Porch Fest 2020, which is September 19th. The porch signups are now live and will go through beginning of April. So the committee wanted to sign porches up earlier. So if you have a great porch and you want to host bands on your porch on September 19th, go and sign up for that.
Do you know what the URL is?
I was just looking at that. Come back.
All right, I will come back to you.
Just think it will be warm.
Maybe
We'll be
warm.
wearing shorts.
Sweet. Oh my gosh, so exciting.
It's ysporchfest.com.
Nice. All right, great. Awesome.
I have 2 announcements.
Yes.
The first one is a celebration in honor of Black History Month and the Wheeling Gaunt Community Service Award. And it's the service award is going to be given in honor of the 365 Project, an invaluable community service organization whose work promotes and sustains African American heritage and culture in Yellow Springs. Their iconic Blacks in Yellow Springs guided tour includes one featuring the life and legacy of Wheeling Gaunt. And also, just this last weekend, the 365 Project had the official release of the Blacks in Yellow Springs history book. And that was a really cool event as well. There's going to be a keynote address by Alfred Anthony Pinkard, who's the president of Wilberforce, was the 22nd president of Wilberforce University. There's going to be a historical perspective by an author named Brenda Hubbard, who wrote Legacy of Grace, The Life and Times of Wheeling Gaunt. There's going to have then the Community Service Award presentation. There's going to be an update on the sculpture and some narratives about how that project is going. And then there's going to be a flower and sugar tea reception, which is very appropriate given Wheeling Gaunt's legacy. And that's going to be an 1863 sugar cookie recipe from the Yellow Springs Historical Society.
Nice.
So hope to see you there on Tuesday, February 25th from 6:30 to 8 at Antioch College, McGregor Hall.
Great.
Second of all, and I think this is in the packet, Judy,
Yes, it is.
Okay, so, the World House Choir, so those of you who live in Yellow Springs probably know about the World House Choir. The World House Choir is trying to convene more than 200 singers, to be part of, William Barber's 32-state caravan, for the Poor People's Campaign. And Yellow Springs is the only stop in Ohio as he goes through to have the mass demonstration in Washington on June 20th. And the campaign is endeavoring to awaken Americans to the very real issues of poverty and is fashioned after Dr. Martin Luther King's Poor People's Campaign from the 1960s. And even though it's convening by the World House Choir, the rehearsals are at Sinclair Community College because we're really trying to get a big group together. So there's 2 more rehearsals, one on March 9th and one on April 13th. You'll see these around town. And really, you don't have to be a singer to join this. The music that we're singing is very simple. It's call and response. You don't have to read music. And it's a great event. So we hope to see more and more people out there. Come and bring a friend. Thanks.
All right, Kevin?
This is just a reminder that I imagine you were probably going to mention that early voting begins tomorrow for the March 17th primary elections on March 17th. So early voting again does begin tomorrow. And that I looked that up to be sure because I will not be here for our March 16th council meeting.
Neither will I.
Wow.
I announced that the last meeting. Uh-oh.
No emergency legislation allowed. You're okay.
Well, we've already got what we want in, so, all right, cool.
Okay.
I wanted to mention a couple things as well. One of those is the climate change seminar that is happening on February 24th from 1 to 3 p.m. That's being hosted by the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission, and there's a lot of excitement around that. And I would encourage council members to try to attend, as well as it's open to everybody.
I
So-
am going if anyone else.
Yes. I'm going too. So yeah, yeah. All right. We can take the Rails to Trails car. Also, yeah, I wanted to mention the services for Daryl Dewar. Josue, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. As you know, a beloved member of our community passed unexpectedly suddenly, and we have been invited to participate in his service that's going to be held in Dayton. I'm looking for the exact address, and that is, it's taking place February 19th from 4 to 7 p.m. at the House of Weed Funeral Home, which is located at 2107 North Gettysburg Avenue in Dayton. The family will be in attendance from 5 to 7.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I also wanted to mention, I'm not convinced that we've had the participation with the update for the comprehensive land use plan that we would like to see. I mean, there's been some great events, but I do want to remind people that sustainableyellowsprings.com is the way that you can not only participate in the survey, but also you can drop pins on like areas in the village where things should happen. And so I just want to, put a shout out there to make sure that.
Did you
yeah.
have success with that? Because I did not. When I went on, I wasn't able to do anything with that one map thing.
Yeah.
It also took a really long time for the PDFs to come up, so if I have an old computer, but still, it was cumbersome.
Yeah.
Okay, I will look into the issues on the website. I know that I checked it when it went up, and so, but I'll double check to make sure that it is working. Thank you for the announcement, Brian. I do have a reference in the manager's report that the current survey is closing on the 21st, and then we'll have another survey with additional follow-up questions, and that will open, I'm not sure an exact date, but we'll get that information out. Also, we're looking to have a special edition run in a newspaper that would summarize the comprehensive land use plan so that we can get the word out, and that's to build up engagement for the next open house, which we're looking to select a date for that, so.
Cool. I mean, kind of on a related note, and it was interesting for me to hear at our nonprofit networking meeting this past Wednesday, I think it was, Tuesday. Aaron made the comment that one of the things that he had heard from residential developers is that they do not like dealing with Yellow Springs. And he clarified the fact that it's not the village, it's the citizenry. And that made me think, a little bit about like there's some important like messages there. And, one of those is that, we do as, a community need to push back on, sort of the development things that happen, around, the county and around the region. But it was, just kind of interesting to me as far as like a piece of feedback that I think we all need to, think a little bit about, what that means. But ultimately, I take that as a positive that we push back. But I also think it's something important to think about in terms of if we want to move forward with affordable housing and other development, how we like achieve that balance. But I did want to share that sort of outtake, from this initiative so far. Couple other things I wanted to mention. Friends Care, their feast is happening on March 14th. And I know that you need to make your reservations by February 21st. So support that group. They are awesome. And the Chamber annual meeting is happening this Thursday, February 20th. That's going to be great as well. And yeah, I think that's all I have. All right. So next up, we have got the we've got the consent agenda for today, and that's just the minutes for February 3rd, 2020. And I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Next up, review of the agenda. Anything we want to add, amend, etc.?
Well, I'm wondering if we should move the new business item, the new jail construction, to the beginning, just because we have so many people here for that who may not want to get into these other things on the agenda.
So, I mean, I would be okay with moving that to citizen concerns.
Well, some of the discussion on the public hearings legislation might be longer than, I'm not sure those are going to be quick.
Well, if people are coming to council, hopefully this isn't going to be a long meeting, and I think it's good for people to actually see what happens in council. So if they have to wait, what citizens' concerns is scheduled for basically an hour from now. I mean, if everyone else thinks we should move it, that's fine, but I'm comfortable leaving it where it is.
Yeah, I guess it won't really make a difference either way. But I will say, yeah, I think, I do think things are gonna like be short, so.
And I think, I think we should leave it the same, only if, for several reasons, but one in particular. I mean, some folks do take the timing seriously, and if they're expecting to show up at 8:15 for an event, for an item that's scheduled at 8:15, we'll be doing them a disservice. You know, so we've talked about moving things around on the agenda in general, but this is today's agenda, and for those folks that are living by this agenda, I think we do them a service to leave it as it is.
It's a good comment. Okay. So it sounds like we're gonna leave that. Anything else? Okay. So let's move into, legislation, or I'm sorry,
Petitions.
petitions and communications. Mary Ann?
So, yes, we had a number of petitions. We had 2 letters from Mitzi Miller objecting to the Home Inc. tap fee waiver, a letter from Teresa Mayer opposing metered parking downtown, potential of metered parking downtown. Elise Burns submitted the Mayor's Court data and monthly report. Lisa has already mentioned the World House Choir invitation. Then, in honor of Black History Month, the Coretta Scott King Center at Antioch College is presenting Philip Agnew, who's an organizer and artist. The presentation will be this Thursday, the 20th, at 7 o'clock at the Wellness Center at Antioch College, at the South Gym. It's free and open to the public. Pat Deweese submitted a letter opposing the jail tax, which we have in our packet. St. Mary's Development Corporation submitted a letter for the village government to notify the Ohio Housing Finance Agency of concerns and/or support for the senior housing project, and I am recommending that we write a letter of support, and council members who want to sign on to that letter do so, and I'm happy to write the letter, and just would like a show of hands who would want to sign on to that letter. Ryan, Lisa, okay, I'll get that. I'll work with Judy to get that out. Colin Altman submitted a letter clarifying his stipulation regarding the fire lane at the Glen Cottage Apartments project. I think that is all the communication.
And then I just want to hop back up to the St. Mary's call for letters of support, because my understanding is that it's not limited to council. And so, you know, I would encourage community members that, you know, want to write a letter of support. And actually, Judy, I think this would be an appropriate thing to put on our Facebook page as well.
As to where to send the letters and.
Yes.
Sure.
So, because this is a village goal that we're committed to, and I think it makes sense to, you know, give our citizens an opportunity to support what could ultimately mean 54 more units of housing that are affordable for our community. And we've got some challenges, I understand, around that, but at the same time, it's, you know, a highly competitive opportunity that I think we need to think about, so. Okay. Ready for legislation? All right. So, village goals. So I guess I want to begin by saying some updates to the village goals did not happen. You know, we had talked about the team having some items in there. I know Laura had some comments as well. And so I would like to turn this into more of a discussion about, you know, the priorities of what we want to tweak. So maybe we spend about 15 minutes on that. And I think the resolution to approve those goals should happen at the next meeting. So, And I'll partly take the blame for not updating some of that, you know. So if there's any blame to be laid, but anyway, Laura, I know you have some thoughts, so why don't you kick it off?
So I spent about an hour looking at the 2020 village goals that the form you had at the retreat, and then I reread the retreat minutes. And I guess what I was struck by was how some things we talked about were very general, like the housing goals with some benchmarks that we want to support and put out there for others to try to meet. And then when I got the January 31st version, there was a lot of really specific goals that we did not discuss at the retreat. And regarding housing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 new things appeared that I think were surprising to me, and I really feel like moved local village government strongly in the direction of itself being a housing developer or having a department of housing, and yet I just feel like we have not organized ourselves to be that involved in being a housing developer. Like we will create a mixed income housing design for Glass Farm. We will complete the village housing plan. We will identify Glass Farm developers. I just feel like these specific goals are going over the line if we don't formalize it in a better way. Like create a housing department with a department head for that, or a commission. I mean, it seems like, and I'm not sure where it's coming from because we didn't discuss several of these very specific goals. Resolve zoning issues to promote community land trust. I don't understand what that even means. So at this moment, I'm feeling very kind of distant from some of these goals, and I would love to, if we want to adopt them, and I'm just one vote, so if everybody else on this council loves these goals, obviously vote them in, you know. So I'm just one vote. There were several other items also that appeared. Many of them I think we have discussed in many public meetings, like everything around Vernay, for example. Obviously, that's got to happen. So that's just in general. Then one thing that got removed, which I would like to see come back, is the updating YSPD policies to reflect village values and address the impacts on the economically disadvantaged. And I know the chief's been working real hard on updating policies. We have this thing called Lexipol that's a real resource. There are other resources. But those don't necessarily tie directly into the policing vision and the goals that we have. You know, like that almost takes a more public body, like the Justice System Commission, for example. So I'd like to see that put back in. And then I know there's one typo in the typo category that we changed on here. So
Right.
anyway,
The village justice system one, take a look at the third bullet. About economically or disadvantaged groups, does that get
well, I'm
close
looking
to
at
it?
the 31st one.
And I'm looking at the packet.
Well, that's what I thought
Here it is.
Oh, okay, so that was one that got moved from column C to column B. So, excuse me on that. So a couple of things did get moved from columns, and I thought I had them all marked, but I don't have that one marked.
Fine.
Thank you.
Mary Ann?
Well, in regard to the housing goals and where they are, they have been in our goals for, it seems like, a couple years. But I have made changes to the goals that didn't get in. It gets very confusing, like what goal, what addition are we looking at? To me, the housing goals are not saying that we're a developer, and that's why it says identify glass farm developers. And the create a concept design for mixed income housing on the glass farm. The wording could be tweaked, perhaps, but what that is saying is that we have goals, housing goals based on the housing needs assessment, as well as what council has said it wants to have the housing, the shift in housing be for the future. And so the concept design would be a design that would not say these are the kind of houses, but say we want to have like 60% of these housing units be rental units, and we want to have 50% of those rental units be for moderate and lower income people, or whatever. In other words, it's the glass farm is the only parcel of land that the village owns of any size that will be suitable for housing. So given that, and that's where we have most control, the idea is to create a neighborhood there that meets, in some ways, the goals that we have. So that's my take on the housing goals. There were a couple, and regarding the community land trust, and I had made a change, and then I don't remember what I'd said, it's not reflected here. The issue regarding the community land trust, it's around community land trust ownership. Our zoning code needs to be changed to identify who is the homeowner. In other words, the homeowner of the community land trust house itself, and how that gets done. And it needs to be done in collaboration with Home Inc., but that is what that zoning issue is about, so that we don't run into the kind of problems that we've had. The other thing that I had suggested to be changed, well, two other things. In regard to infrastructure, which is the third goal, I think we need to do more than study, assess, and develop plans to improve our water distribution, electric distribution, sewer, and stormwater system, especially given the problems that we've identified with our sewer system and the influx of stormwater into the sewer system. I think we need to have a goal saying, in fact, we did, Sway has a
Yes.
goal. I think that goal needs to be stated more directly in the infrastructure. goal. Then, the other thing in that same goal, the source water protection plan is not budgeted for this year. So I had said we need to move that to next year. This year, we can be looking at what we need to do in order to do a new source water protection plan. But we haven't budgeted for it, and given that there's concern about not doing things that we don't budget for, and that would be considerable expense, I suppose. But the Environmental Commission voted to recommend that we do reassess our catchment area for our water. So that's what I'm suggesting be in the goal for 2020. Those are the changes, the comments that I have.
Lisa?
Well, I mean, I submitted a document to the packet. After reflection of the discussion and vote on the Home Inc. tap waiver, I spent a lot of time looking at these goals and thinking about them not as silos, as individual silos, but as they relate to each other. And because we're not prioritizing them, they're all goals, and they have in common that they all cost money, and they have in common that they all take capacity. They take time for our village manager and for the team, who then also has to be constantly prioritizing among these goals, and many of them intersect. As I wrote, I'm again, I know we just barely finished the budget, right? But I kind of took it up a level and started really being concerned that we know our spending is outpacing our revenues. And we know that this year will be over like that. I mean, that's just how time goes. And I think that we really have to have early intention and clarity about how we're going to manage cost while both promoting economic development and affordability. And we've spent a lot of time talking about affordable housing, and I'm very strongly in favor of affordable housing, and I think a portion of our development should be land trust. I'm in favor of that, but that's not the only lever for economic development in the community. And I think we have to think about how we're going to reduce the tax burden on citizens. And I also think that we have to budget, I mean, what I called it in my memo was prepare for the cost of competition. Because the way now that municipalities attract businesses is they, give them, there are certain waivers, and you have to match other communities. And if we want to bring companies to Yellow Springs that align with our values and bring well-paying jobs, people who could then move here and boost our economy, the village needs to be ready to make those investments. So that's a different kind of investment than the TAP fee waivers for Home Inc., but I think they're all important. And I think, if we're going to talk about being a partnership with Home Inc., then I do think that we have to have more of a joint strategic planning session to, bring it into planning and to understand multi-year timelines and costs so that we don't have surprises, and so the community knows what's going on and what's coming up, and we can budget for it, just as we do in our personal budgets. And so what does that mean for an edit of this goal document? I'm afraid I'm not exactly certain, except for to say at some level, and maybe it's the finance committee, I don't know if it's part of the participatory budgeting plan, because it's not too soon to start talking about that. But I think we need to start thinking about a planful, clear, intentioned, long-term plan for investing in economic development. And that one aspect of that, but not the only one, is affordable housing.
Yes. And so, I want to insert a couple comments there, because I totally agree. And, one of the things that Laura and we talked before this meeting is, whether it's, our part 2 of our retreat, which we've done before, but actually, I think I'm even more interested in a work session, and our goals around work sessions have been to try to, engage community members with, limited success, but, we always put it out there. But my sense is that we've got a lot of things right, but, having some feedback around that would be great. And, ultimately, the things that I'm hearing, I think are right on. And, given that there's been a lot of engagement around the update of the comprehensive land use plan, I'd like to think that there's, a little bit more engagement around that. So I guess that's what I would like to see is, I think there are some areas where we've got some opportunities. I would want to structure the agenda a bit, so that we're thinking about economic development, residential development, a few of those things. Some of the other things I think are kind of no-brainers, like broadband, I think we're all committed to it. We just need to figure it out, you know, so we don't need to like dig down on those things. You know, what we need to figure out, and I think this will also help council get on the same page, is, you know, where we're at in terms of, you know, the housing, the economic development, some of those other pieces. So anyway, so that, you know, that has resonated with me, as I've thought about like where we move forward. And I agree with Lisa that these things all do interconnect, you know, so, you know, we can't like silo them. We have to think about how they all work together. And we also have to think about how the team is gonna segue with that. And, you know, so that's where I think a work session would make sense.
I think we need it.
Yeah.
I think it's more than just wordsmithing this document and
Yes.
improving the clarity of a few bullets.
Right.
And I agree with you that probably the majority of it is pretty much set, but that some of the really big issues, we still have to talk about what do we really mean? And do we all mean the same thing with these words?
And how do we execute
And
it?
how do we execute? And what's the impact? I mean, because, you know, the one thing, and I discussed this with Mary Ann, regarding the housing goal is a concern, that what proportion of the village manager's work effort could potentially be consumed by this particular initiative? And what would the impact be on the totality of work that the village manager and the village manager's team do? And if we say it shouldn't be our village manager's job to implement this housing development goal, then who does carry it? But I do have some concerns with just the implication of workload of that one activity for our village manager.
So, Lisa Krieger, do you have time to work with me and the village team to set up, I mean, I guess like kind of a framework for how we could then have that work session?
Yes.
Okay. So that's what I would like to do.
Okay.
And so, because again, I think we've got good bones, but I think I mean, we're trying to do something pretty big, honestly, you know? And again, you've heard me say it a million times, I'm gonna say it again, we have no support from the federal, state, regional government, you know, to do what we need to do. So, you know, it is implicit on us to be creative. And this is why, like, everybody at this table, you know, is, you know, and out there, you know, it's critical. So, so I guess that's where, why don't we make that our goal? So for the next meeting, we have like a framework, and then we put out there like what that looks like. Does that make sense?
Brian,
Laura?
I have a request for the work session on all of these items, that if a number can be put on them, as in a budget, like if all these housing activities were a housing budget, I'd like to see numbers. For example, within the comprehensive land use plan, we paid somebody to create this concept design for Glass Farm, for example. What did that cost? I want to know, I'd like to have a number on all of these activities. The source water protection, I can tell you that goes back to my time as village manager. We still hadn't implemented it, and it still wasn't in the budget. That was 2013. So what's the cost on that, for example? And that's so important, especially with the Vernay matter progressing.
All right?
So just to clarify, Brian, you're saying next meeting, by then you and Lisa will have gotten together and come back with sort of a frame up, and then work session to follow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
I
mean,
think, and I think, you know, what we might also come back with is, you know, I mean, still the framework around our current, like, goals. But, you know, again, that will be a lens for, you know, figuring out, like, how we sort of drill down on what we actually need to do. So a little bit more action oriented. Marion?
Yeah, I've been working on an idea that started off small and it's gotten a little bigger, and I don't know if it fits in right here, but I'm gonna say it right here and then we'll see. After our last meeting, with the concern of some people, well, concern of all of council, but in particular some council members and staff, about the cost of the fee waiver, $40,500, I started thinking about that, and I remembered something Tony Bent had said to me. Tony Bent, whose memorial service was this weekend and who was really a mentor for me. He said to me sometime after he was retired, he said, I would really like for there to be an easy way for people like myself who are retired and have money to donate money to the village in lieu of income tax, because even though we may be thinking as a village government we're struggling financially, the community is a wealthy community. Not to say we don't have poor people, we do. We know 1/4 of our children in this village are poor. But we do have a lot of fairly wealthy people. A lot of those people are retired. Therefore, they don't pay income tax. So initially I was thinking, and I'm still planning on doing a pledge drive of people who support the senior housing. Also have a concern, we don't want the village to be taking money out of a pot that maybe is going to diminish that pot, to donate to that. I mean, I think we could raise $40,500. Well, I know we could, from people who are committed to that project, and I am, and I will. So that's where I started, and then actually Lisa and I talked, and then I met with Gina Marie Cox, because as I thought about it, I thought, well, there are various projects. There's the utility roundup, there's the dog park, there are other particular projects that individual or groups in the community are interested in who would be happy to donate to see that project happen. So I met with Gina Marie to talk about the different ways that we might do that, and there are a lot of different ways. But how to set it up, and I'd like to get village council, village government buy-in to do something like that, so that people could they could put in, donate money for a particular project, or they could just, as an annual donation for people who say, hey, I love the village, I'm not paying income tax, I'm making all this money, I'm happy. So that's, I don't know if that goes into this planning thing or not.
I think it totally does. And, it reminds me of, back when we started, Lori Asklin talked about this, with some of the improvements around, the bridge at Ellis Pond and whatever. And we've talked about it forever, but we haven't established it.
Well, the
So,
community
I love it,
foundation is
yeah.
now, Gina Maria was telling me all these things they're doing. I said, gee, you become an activist organization. And, they are. So they're quite willing to work with us. And does the CDC have a role in this? I don't know. So how to frame it, but, okay, we'll put it in that pot.
And I have a feedback on that. We checked NRR on how we could receive donations, and we have existing budget line items for donations,
Oh.
and we could receipt it and track the money for particular projects. So we have that already created in our financial system.
Right.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so, ultimately, we're gonna refine those goals. I will say as a side note, Kevin, if you still wanna have any input on the goals, you better do it ASAP. So I imagine at our next meeting, we will have a refined document, but we're also gonna work on this, how do we, look at a work session where we actually action those goals. So, okay. Cool. All right, so let's talk about Resolution 2020-09, and Judy, if you could, let's read that in full.
All right, this is authorizing the village manager to waive water and sewer tap fees and zoning permit fees for a 54-unit affordable housing project for Yellow Springs Home Inc. Whereas Yellow Springs Home Inc. provides sustainably affordable housing opportunities within the village of Yellow Springs, and whereas Home Inc. has proposed an accessible, affordable housing project to be located between Herman Street and Marshall Streets in Yellow Springs, and whereas the village has, for previous Home Inc. projects, agreed to waive utility tap-in fees and zoning fees in order to demonstrate the village's support of affordable housing, and whereas Home Inc. has now made a request that Village Council evidence support in the form of tap fee forgiveness, and whereas this action represents an intentional investment in provision of local affordable senior housing under the village's home rule powers, now therefore Council for the Village of Yellow Springs, Ohio hereby resolves that. Section 1. Village Council hereby asserts its belief that affordable housing is in the public interest and agrees to contribute a one-time waiver for water, sewer, and electric tap-in fees not to exceed $40,500 in total and under the following conditions. Home Inc. St. Mary's received project funding approval in the year 2020 from the Ohio Finance Housing Authority. Home Inc. formalizes their stated agreement to contribute $29,000 towards the slip lining of the Herman Street sewer line, which is required to occur prior to occupation of the Yellow Springs Senior Apartments project. Home Inc. St. Mary's receives final site plan approval for the Yellow Springs Senior Apartments project from Village Planning Commission. Any change in tap fees for any reason shall not constitute a revision upward of the agreed-upon maximum contribution stated above. Section 2, village government contribution will take the form of fee forgiveness of water, sewer, and electric tap fees as above stated. Section 3, if all the conditions set forth in Section 1 are not met, this commitment to waive the water, sewer, and electric tap-in fees shall be rescinded.
Can I get a motion?
I move.
Second.
Okay. Josue, why don't you start this one out?
Sure. At the request of council, we follow up on the legality of transferring funds from the general fund to the enterprise funds. We have a legal opinion, and it's included in the packet. And in summary, this is possible. We can take funds from the general fund and place them in enterprise funds for the purposes of economic development.
Okay, and yeah, I'll just, kind of riff off of that to say that, first of all, we do not have a lot of activity around housing development currently. I would hope that we will, as we continue to put it out there, but as I think I mentioned in my comments earlier, there is an impression that residential developers don't want to deal with Yellow Springs. And again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it means that we have to rely on some of our own resources. So that being said, I proposed at our last meeting that one of the ways that we could encourage affordable housing and 54 of the 300 to 500 units that we're trying to do in the next 10 years is to support that that endeavor through our lodging tax, which, again, I was confident that we could transfer that money to our, I guess, our enterprise funds. And, I appreciated and was, really happy that Johnny and the team brought forward the challenges when we do tap waivers. So this to me was a way to think about how we use outside money that's injected into our community for what I think should be community development to invest in our community. I do not want us to forget about the fact that when we invest in housing, we get property tax, for sure. We get income tax, probably, especially because, the affordable senior housing complex we're talking about is for 50-ish plus year olds. So people that are still working. So there are a lot of benefits to our community. There are a lot of challenges I agree. But if we really want to start to make a difference in our community, we need to think about how we make investments and not just like do nothing. If we continue to do nothing, we are not going to be able to address our infrastructure challenges, and we are going to fall into situations that a lot of other communities have as well. So, I guess I'm pretty serious about this because we have opportunities now that we need to look at. And this is why I think that a balance where we've got some revenue that's not allocated for, that doesn't like take away from taxpayer dollars, and that can like ultimately benefit our community is important. So I'll get off my pedestal and yes.
Reading
Lisa.
from the legal brief, lodging taxes are considered to be an excise tax and arguably would not be eligible to be transferred to the enterprise fund.
Did you read?
I would
you
note
read
the
it?
village has not levied lodging taxes for a specific purpose, although we've discussed several. And for this reason, one could argue the revenue could be transferred from the general fund to the enterprise fund. It's not necessary to the opinion, since the lodging tax revenue is already going to the general fund.
So I just
That
want
is
to,
a circular argument.
right, well, I just want to clarify, I mean,
That
I
I read
will
like 12
say,
times.
I would, I mean, I'm gonna like hold back like, just my disappointment in like that articulation, because it does express a misunderstanding of what lodging tax is, and it's very clear if you look at the ORC that lodging tax goes into the general fund. So I was a little bit disappointing about that part of the I guess explanation, because it to me expresses a misunderstanding of lodging tax. And I mean, when we first started the lodging tax and Melissa Van Zant was here, she made it very clear it goes into the general fund. Colleen knows that as well. So, I mean, there's no doubt that we can do with that money what we want. So I have made it clear what I think we should do with that money, which is invest it in, community development, which is what we're talking about here. But yeah, that expresses a misunderstanding of the lodging tax. And, I'll go on the record for that, so.
I have a question about the resolution. It says that the criteria, one of which is that the site plan review has to be approved by planning commission. If planning commission were to not approve it, does it then come to council? It seems like that's what happened last time.
For what particular project?
The senior apartments. Last time it came to planning commission did not pass it. It came to council and council passed it, correct?
Correct.
So my,
Final goes to planning commission, it does not go back to council again.
I'm sorry.
Final goes to planning commission, it does not go back to council again.
So what is the difference this time? Oh, that wasn't the final plan.
No,
Oh, okay.
but they're under the parameters that the plan, has not significantly changed. I mean, they voted that it had not significantly changed from the preliminary.
Okay. So
it doesn't
final,
go back.
final site plan approval goes to planning commission. If it does not pass, it's dead. There's no other recourse. Is that what you're saying?
I would assume there would be an appeal process.
They can appeal to council, I mean,
There
ultimately.
would be an appeal process.
And can council overturn it?
Yes.
I-
It happened with the solar array, so that was appealed to council.
So I would suggest that wording be changed to, could it just say, Home Inc. St. Mary receives final site plan approval for the senior housing apartment project, and stop there, rather than saying from whom it receives it?
don't editorialize, in other words. So,
Well, that is the body charged with reviewing site plans. I mean, so the wording is logical. You could take the last bit off and, I mean, I don't think there's any harm there because,
Okay, well, I would like to amend the resolution to take the last 4 words from Village Planning Commission off and have it stop at project.
I'll second that. Okay, any other discussion?
do you want to go ahead and take a vote on that motion so we don't end up doing it all right at the
Sure,
end
sure.
of the fourth?
Okay.
So can't we just do it as one vote?
I would not.
Yeah, it's okay. So, all those in favor of amending the resolution as recommended, signify by saying aye.
Call the
Aye.
question again? You're talking about the amendment? Just the
Just
amendment?
the amendment. Do you, did you?
Yeah, okay, got it, yep,
did you-
yep.
did
I'm
you-
sorry, just didn't quite
Yeah.
get that,
Did-
yeah.
what- Did you say yes or no?
Yeah, I say aye.
Okay.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Okay, any other discussion? on
I have a
this?
point of
Yes.
clarification. So the limit is 40,500. I've got I read it a couple of times. It can be confusing about the electric. I know that Johnny definitely thinks they're going to have to upsize their electric. So any additional cost for upsizing electric will be on the developer.
This is a good time to talk about this, because I demanded this at the last meeting about readiness for service and clarification. So Johnny, do you want to talk about that?
I think there's some wording. Readiness for service is a service that we give on the monthly bill. What we're talking about is aid to construction, and the final wording on their grant proposal, it says anything over 15% is basically not going to be paid by them. It would have to go on. I just wanted on the record that I've been doing this a long time, and I don't think it's a big enough service. And if we have to put in a bigger transformer, bigger wire, that's larger cost to the developer. And I think it needs to state in there that it goes to the developer and not to the Village of Yellow Springs.
Yes. And, I mean, we have never anywhere said that we would take on, like, more than we've, like, agreed to, right?
We have never, no, we've
And
made
there's
this
no-
perfectly clear, but when they wrote their grant out, they made sure to put it in their written document that they sent to us as well, stating that anything over 15%, they can't pay anymore.
Okay. But that doesn't mean we have to pay, right? I mean,
Well, I don't know who's gonna pay it. I mean, you're correct. They didn't say it was up to the village.
Figure that out.
Well,
They didn't say it was up to the village,
Well,
but
it's
you're
not-
right,
correct.
but it doesn't mean like we're just automatically like,
Right.
on the hook.
They'll have to find other financing.
Okay,
Correct.
good.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. And I agree, whatever we need to do to clarify that.
well, the limit,
not-
will the limit do, I'm comfortable with the dollar limit.
Yeah,
That
Yeah.
should do it, right?
yeah,
Everybody agreed?
definitely, yeah. Okay. Any other comments? Questions or comments from citizens? Mitzi?
Hi, Mitzi Miller. A couple things I agree, there needs to be set limits and clear guidelines with Home Inc. Because initially they said they would take care of the waiver fees and then found out they didn't have the funding and came back to the city for more money, so, or for additional money. So I agree on that. What I want to say is, I'm going to just read this. Why wasn't a lower amount considered when Home Inc.'s director said they were asking for $40,500, but would accept anything you were willing to give them? The quickness of this request and little value placed on our former village manager and present village manager's input on village infrastructure and finance concerns me deeply. Will it be a given we provide waiver fee forgiveness and land purchase and discounts in the future to Home Inc. to support our affordable housing goals? I think that's a question we need to ask. How will future affordable housing projects' growth impact our infrastructure, water, electric, sewer plants? Will they need to be enlarged or upgraded, and at whose expense? Will it be the citizens of Yellow Springs? I ask you to put our village infrastructure and finance first over affordable housing. I am a firm believer that we need affordable housing, and my passion is seniors in town. But I think there's valid questions that you need to ask yourselves as council members, and make sure that you put all citizens of this community first.
Thanks, Mitzi. I guess I do want to say something because, I feel like the narrative has really been off for a while around Home Inc. And I guess I want to remind folks, first of all, that Home Inc. was established by a proclamation of the village council, well before our time. And it was a recognition, like with everything else in this village, like we realized 20 years ago we should have done broadband, municipal broadband, and we didn't do it. We didn't act on some of the things that we could have done, but we, recognized that Home Inc. Had a value for us, that having an arm that would support affordable housing was important. And so related to that, what I don't want people to forget is that every time we develop new residential, housing, we recoup in terms of property tax. And so one of the things that I didn't emphasize enough at the last meeting was, the argument around, what we get in terms of this investment from property tax. And I mentioned this earlier, as well as, potential income tax. So I think we can't forget that this is an investment. But I also want people to remember that Home Inc. is not this special interest group, but they are a part of the village. And while we haven't done a great job of formalizing this, we're working on it right now, and we have a lot of things that we need to do to make sure that we all understand how we work together and we don't have any surprises. But that being said, just do a search and look at any community, and you will see that affordable housing is at the top of their list, all right? People are just suffering across this nation, and we can't rely on the federal or state government to resolve that. So as localities, we have to think about what we can do. And, again, we are not taking any money from taxpayers to support what could be 54 more units to support affordable housing. We are proposing that we take 40,000 out of the 58,000 that we get every year from people that come into this village and hang out and love Yellow Springs from the lodging tax. And so I can't imagine a more responsible way to balance everybody's interest. So I would just encourage everyone to support what Home Inc. is trying to do for our community. And remember that, just like Tecumseh Land Trust and many of our other nonprofits, that they are trying to make a difference in our community and helping to provide capacity to deliver on our goals. All right. Any other comments? Okay. So I think we need to vote on this resolution. So all those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. All right, and finally, we've got, Judy, next resolution. Can we read that in full, please?
Yes, this is authorizing the village manager to enter into an agreement for the sale of village-owned renewable energy credits. Whereas the village owns 60,359 renewable energy credits, RECs, as a result of renewable energy production, and seeks to sell a portion of those RECs as a means of generating revenue for the electric fund. And whereas village council has determined that the RECs are not needed for the purpose of compliance, now therefore council for the village of Yellow Springs, Ohio hereby resolves that. Section 1, the village manager is hereby authorized to recommend the village contract with American Municipal Power as necessary to enable the sale of village RECs. I have a Section 2 in your amended copy that's before you that says the sale of blank RECs is hereby authorized by council. So following this discussion, you will fill in that blank. Section 3, this resolution shall become effective immediately upon its adoption.
Can I get a motion?
I move.
Second?
Okay, Josue?
All right, thank you, Brian. I have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm covering some of the information that's previously discussed. I start off with highlighting where our energy come from. As you know, over 83% of our energy is under contract from renewable energy sources. So what does that mean in terms of renewable credit generation? So we've got our AMP combined hydro, and this is these projects where they're forecasting the generation on an annual basis. So these are all the projects that produce our energy, with the exception of what we buy off the market. That generates the following credits, which is a total over 60,000 credits have been generated since we've had these contracts in place. Most of it is coming from hydro, totaling over 55,000. On this slide, I want to point out that we have RECs that are aged. They were generated in 2016, and the RECs are good for up to 5 years. So these 2016 credits, they will be expiring, and then they will no longer be worth anything. To put in perspective, each REC is the equivalent of 1 megawatt hour of production of clean energy. So for each production of 1 megawatt, we get 1 credit. So these credits represent that. The next slide is the schedule of what these credits are selling for. These are non-solar renewable energy credits. So this table just highlights the two different RECs based on the year that they're produced. The ones up on the screen are 2019 and 2020. As you can see that the price has varied for both credits. Newer credits are worth more than older credits. So our 2016 credits are the least valuable just because of their aging out. They're only good for up to 5 years. All right, so now put in perspective, how much power do we consume as a community? We consume a little over 38,000 megawatt hours of energy. This is our most recent number. This is 2019. In 2019, we had a net increase of 2.1 increase from 2018, and that's a 5.5 increase from our 2019 forecasted numbers that were created back in October of 2018. So putting that in perspective, if you think how much credits do we need for the energy consumption that we have, we would need 38,000 credits. So we have more credits than the energy, representing the energy that we consume. So there's a net difference of 22,000, and I think I highlighted that at the last council meeting, that we have more energy, more credits than needed to be 100% green. I'll get to why that's important because that ties into my recommendation. So how much are energy credits worth? As I mentioned, the 2016 and the 2017, they're older, so they're worth less. So when you add up the credits from 2016 and 2017, they're just a bit under the 30,000 RECs, which is that at 50% mark. So if we throw in some credits from 2018 to get us to that 30,000 credits, we'll be looking at a price point around $6.10 per credit. If we wanted to sell all the 60,000 credits, because those 2018, 2019 credits are worth more, we'll be looking at around $7.05 per credit. So in the next table, these are some options that we work through the numbers. So our 60,000 credits would be worth around $423,000, or 30,000 credits. We started off with the older ones, because if we don't sell those, they would expire and then they'll be worth nothing. Those 30,000 credits are around 183,000. Before I get to my recommendation, I want to answer or provide some light onto the question that was asked at the last council meeting, both from council and members of the public. What will we do with the proceeds of the sale of our credits? Well, here are 4 ideas. And some of this is in a priority that the administration has considered it. Invest in the electric infrastructure. We have a pending engineering report, which we expect that there will be a task list of things for us to do, similar to we received our sanitation report, sanitary line report, and there's a task list for that we need to follow up on ASAP to prevent things from deteriorating further. So we know that's important. Fund new solar production. We could use the money to finance or offset some of the cost of generating new local solar production, say new solar farm. And we have plenty of space on village-owned property that we could do additional projects. Third idea here is to fund energy-saving initiatives. This could be in the form of rebates, incentives for homeowners or businesses to engage in energy-saving initiatives to reduce their energy consumption and our overall energy consumption and peak demand for the village. And the 4th item, this came up at the last council meeting in reference to a gold around utility roundup. So how about funding utility roundup 2.0? And this would include energy audits and weatherization activities for homeowners. So here are 4 ideas that we could use the proceeds for. All right, now let's get into what are the options for selling a RECs. We're looking at 4 options. Selling 60,000 RECs, which would expect to yield around 423,000. Sell 30,000 RECs and expect to yield around 183,000. Option 3, sell 0. Option 4, which is to sell 60,000 and buy new RECs. And I think it was discussed at last meeting that there was a group that did just that, and that was the Oberlin. Oberlin sold all of its credits. They had very expensive credits and generated $2 million from the sale of its current credits and future credits, and then they didn't know what to do with it. So that is an example of a community similar to Yellow Springs that has sold its renewable credits and done something with them. So I go back to our recommendations before you. We recommend option number 2. This what allows us to sell all excess credits that we have, and we're still green, and still leave room for the future renewable energy credits that would be generated.
And just to clarify with the Oberlin example, so they bought back RECs to still be green.
Correct. So the market in RECs is split in 2 areas or 2 markets. There's the volunteer markets, folks that really care about being green and they voluntarily buy credits or produce green energy. And then there's the compliance sector where companies that are required to purchase renewable credits. And so the markets have different price points depending on who's generating it and where they're being generated and where they're being bought. So we are in a sector that the renewable energy credits command a higher price. We could buy cheaper credits elsewhere. They're not the same quality and they're different markets.
Did you by any chance look at a hybrid of 2 and 4 where we sell 30 and then can you go back? Where we sell 30 for the revenue and then we also sell the other 30 and buy?
Yes, I looked at that, and that is an option, and we would need to go out and market and buy
Yeah.
credits. So I
Yeah.
don't have particular cost for
Data
those,
on that.
but they would be cheaper than what we're selling
Well,
ours for.
that's what I'm wondering.
Yes.
If the net changes, we're selling all 60, but we're not selling all 60 for the full proceeds. We're selling 30 and flipping 30.
Correct.
Well, and didn't you also say, like, we can't really get the pricing without like actually putting them on the market?
Correct, correct. So we spoke to our AMP or broker, and we really can't get pricing on our credits until we go to the market. We have to put in the market,
see.
and then there's gonna be a buyer that says, here's my bid price.
I see.
Because you've grouped them, and that depends on the quality of the credit, the year of the credit, and how many credits they're buying at
That's
once.
unpredictable.
It's not necessarily unpredictable. The price point fluctuates a little bit, but there is some variability. The change that we saw from the last council meeting to now is 10 cents per credit, which, on one, it doesn't seem a lot, but it adds up. So last
So-
time we presented, we're looking around $6. Now we've got a more precise number of $6.10 for 2016, 2017, and a little bit of 2018 credits.
So by going with option 2, we're making a solid move and still reserving the opportunity to do something else in the future because we're still sitting on reserve.
Correct.
Thank you.
I do not understand the benefit of not just selling everything. I don't get it. I didn't, can you re-explain that?
Right, so this,
In other words, number
I think
one.
it's a value system. It's, we started talking about last council meeting, what are green? And there's two aspects of green energy production. There's the greenness, that it comes from a renewable source, and there's some value attached to that, to meet either compliance goal or aspirational goals, or just living some values. And then there's the electricity that's being produced. There are two separate things. So in terms of value of selling all of them, yes, the value is $423,000. That's the
Right.
economic value of it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And we can certainly consider selling that. I think that's where we need your direction. We did our due diligence, follow up on our numbers and what they would mean. The recommendation of option number 2, it would allow us to sell all the excess credits, and we can still claim to be green community because we hold on to almost 100% of energy credits to offset our energy consumption. We need about 38,000 credits to be 100% green. That's based on our consumption. By selling 30,000 credits now, we'll have 30,000 left. So we're almost there. In 2020, we're going to generate additional credits because we have energy under contract. So that's going to generate another 14,000 energy credits. So by end of 2020, if we're holding on to our 30 and we add 14 to it, we will be at 44. So we will be at over 100% green energy consumption. So we would have access that, in terms of just offsetting our energy usage, it doesn't offer any additional value.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying, it's about appearance. It's about appearance. It's not about our consumption of energy, it's about, can we say we're green? And that doesn't, I don't really care that much about. I do care about our consumption part. But at this point, especially given everything that's being said and people's concern about how much our electricity costs, I'd just say sell them all. And maybe see if we can lower our electric rates as one of the options.
What I find intriguing about option 4 is the same thing with option 1. I mean, you take those older 2016 credits, and on a credit-by-credit basis, they become more valuable.
Right.
So, I mean, if option 4, for example, if you could sell them all at whatever it is per credit price, and then turn right around and repurchase very inexpensively, if there are some very cheap credits out there, and get us about in the same place with $30,000 or 30,000 credits.
Correct. So following that logic, if we know that the 2020 are worth around a little over $7 and 2016 are worth $6, just by selling our newer credits and buying older credits that will expire and saving money to buy credits for next year, then we would be gaining over 15% by selling our newer credits and buying older credits that may be expiring.
Laura, did you want to say something?
Oh, simply that, the moral argument is when you sell your credits to people who aren't producing green energy, you're giving them the right to say they're green when they're producing energy with fossil fuels or something else. And yet, you know, you lose your bragging rights, essentially. You lose, we really should no longer say we're green if we sell our RECs.
If we
That's
sell
what-
all of our
If we
RECs.
sell all the RECs, and that's the argument for buying them back cheap. I'm in favor of buying them back cheap, so that we can make money and still say we're green.
Are you in favor of 4 or a split of 30-30?
I think I'd go with the staff recommendation, but I want to buy them back cheap.
So, and I'll just say before I open it up to the public, I'm with Mary Ann. We have an incredible renewable energy portfolio. We're doing the right thing as a community, so we should be able to benefit as a community and do whatever we can for our residents. So I'm for option one. But, you know, I'm open to hearing why that's a wrong thing to think about. So, comments or questions from citizens? Leaving it up to us, huh? All right. Well, any other discussion?
Maybe people don't understand.
I mean, it's been out there. I mean, so-
We've heard so many people talk about how our electric rates are high, and this potentially might be able to help us lower our rates.
So I looked at the research on offsetting utility rates, in using this revenue to offset utility
Yeah.
rates. It's reducing it in the immediate future, but the liability of the rate continues onto the future. So it's only good as until you have the cash. At some point, the cash runs out, and then utility rate has to go up.
But there's also the capital piece, right? So, I mean, you know, how we like fix our poles and do
Right.
all other stuff, and that like, I mean, that means we don't have to pull it out of the general fund or
Correct,
whatever.
correct.
So,
I
Right,
think
and
Johnny
there's our
can't
infrastructure.
shake his head any harder.
sure. And I mean, and Johnny has always been like, you know, on like board with like we don't sell our RECs, and now we're talking about doing that. Yes.
Robert Leibkep, just one point of clarification. If we sell it all, and we're generating $15,000 this year, approximately $15,000 in new RECs, does that mean that we won't be green again for 2.5, 3 years to offset our $39,000 investment? I'm a little confused on the math.
Yeah, so if we sold them all,
Yes.
then we would have zero. But then we wouldn't have the bragging rights to call ourselves green. If we didn't take any action, if we didn't go out on the market and buy RECs, we would have to wait for the credits to accumulate to
Accumulate
be
again.
evergreen. And there's a table in here that I had on inventory, and the inventory table shows how we accumulated the credits and from what source over the years.
But option one doesn't show a buyback, option four did. So option four, as the chart reads,
Yes.
there's a difference between 1 and 4. So we're actually giving up our green rights, bragging rights, by
Right.
selling out.
So
That's
I
the only
guess-
clarification I had
Yeah.
in the math.
And I think,
Thank
you
you.
know, I think that's what's, you know, at issue here is, you know, do we, you know, we are obviously producing green energy, and I think we can still brag about that. You know, an 87 to 93% like, you know, renewable energy portfolio, and then do we benefit from that or not? You know, yes.
I guess it's a comment question. If we sell them all, we still are getting 83% of our electricity from renewable sources, which I think is the bottom line goal.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure the bragging rights, the publicity of what the laws say about that or what, but we still are doing that. So to me, that seems like what's the critical factor.
I agree.
So you're enabling polluters to keep polluting. They don't have to change behavior, they bought your behavior.
But they're having to pay for it, so maybe that's going to encourage them to look for a more cost-effective solution in the future.
Maybe.
Well, that's debatable.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's why we said, I mean, this is, you know, this is kind of like why we have government, you know, it's like, you know, it's one of the most interesting discussions I think we've had.
So, McQueen and House are recommending 1. Would you consider the staff recommendation to go with number 2 and then sell and rebuy the remaining 30?
I mean, honestly, I kind of, because I'm like in line with you, Lisa, about like how we need to look at any way that we can, improve our, utility rates and what can we do. And that's why I'm all about number one, because I think, this to me honestly is a no-brainer. And I don't think we lose anything as far as like what we've done as a community, but we also like justify it to our community. So I guess that's why, like, that's where I'm at, and I think, some of the other options, are intriguing to me, but, honestly, I don't think we lose our bragging rights. I mean, we've invested a lot in, making sure that we are a, mostly renewable, like, energy provider. But I don't not appreciate the other arguments around this.
So do we call a vote and then this becomes legislation?
Yes,
Let's do that.
okay.
Would that be called a shell game? Is that what that means? Like,
Number 4 is
Number
for
four.
sure. So,
I think it's called market investing, but if you could call it a shell game, sure.
call it a shell game.
okay, yeah, but I think we've heard the opinions. I think they're all valid. I guess that's the one thing I want to say. So, I mean, this is like a decision
too.
where, it just comes down to moral, financial, it's not,
Yes,
perfect.
to reiterate that, all the opinions are valid.
Yes.
All these opinions are valid. Our recommendations, right, I want to say just in the middle, just leave room for an additional choice that doesn't have to be made now. We could look at it in the future, but we will go with what council agrees to.
I make a motion that we sell 30K and then we sell additional 30K and buy a hybrid of 2 and 4.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm opposed. Okay,
I'm
so
with them.
I think there were 3 votes for that option.
Just to be clear, you're opposing because you wanted all 60 to sell.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are we doing? We're playing the shell game?
No,
Well, I
we're
find,
buying back
yeah,
our green.
I find that shell game, to me, that's a con, and so no,
Well,
I'm
that
not
is what-
proposing a shell game.
So we're selling we're selling them all and then we're buying some back cheap.
Yeah,
That-
Yes, but not all of them.
and in 2020, we'll earn enough that very quickly we'll be back to total 100% greenness
And still generating revenue.
and still generating a couple $300,000 of revenue.
Okay. But you're clear on what that vote was?
Well,
I'm not totally clear.
I'm not
I'll
completely
be
clear,
honest.
but I'm not the village manager. So my question is, to sell 30,000 recs and then sell an additional 30,000 and buy, and then means immediately in a year?
No,
I'm
immediately
not
buy
sure.
cheap.
Immediately.
cheap
So it's a hybrid of
Okay.
2 and
So as long
4.
as you're clear
I'm
on what
clear.
that means, I've got the language.
Yes.
Okay.
We're good.
Thank you.
All right, so we are on to special reports. Planning Commission. All right. Great, Frank. Welcome.
It will hear you no matter
Oh,
where,
well,
no matter how tall you are.
I'm always taller than microphones. Good evening. My name is Frank Doden, and I've been on the Planning Commission since, I think it was October or November of 2018, and I served as the chair of the Planning Commission for last year. And on Planning Commission, over that year, I had the pleasure to serve with a number of other citizens, including Susan Stiles, Andrew Williams, Dino Pilata, Marianne was our village council representative for the year, and Ted Donnell was also on Planning Commission. He resigned the position in December. And then, of course, Lisa has filled in admirably on a couple of occasions as the alternate as well. And of course, the Planning Commission can't really do its job without a lot of help from village staff, including Judy Kintner, the clerk, Johnny Burns, Thank you very much. Who clarifies an awful lot of issues for us. Chris Connard, the village solicitor, as well as, of course, Denise Swinger, who prepares all the packets and recommendations for us, planning and zoning administrator. The village staff provides lots and lots of the necessary information, guidance, and organization to all the members of the Planning Commission as we deal with the issues that come before us. We appreciate their countless hours of work. The Planning Commission, of course, reviews applications regarding zoning, conditional use, planned unit develop, home occupation permits, construction of accessory dwellings. Now we're also handling permits for transient guest lodge, et cetera. And we also make recommendations to village council regarding things like, changing code regarding abandoned cars and weed control, things like that. While many of the applications that come before the Planning Commission are pretty straightforward, if you've watched or participated in any of the meetings, many of them are not nearly as straightforward as they seem when we were just reading through the packets on the weekend. But I have, the whole time I've been on the commission, been really impressed by the conscientious and hard work that the members of the Planning Commission put into preparation for the meetings. And especially, even if we don't all agree, I think all the people on the Planning Commission are really have the interests is not only of the people making the applications, but the interests of the village and the interests of the neighbors involved very firmly in mind in a lot of these sometimes difficult decisions. I believe you guys have the full report that Dee's put together? Yeah. And so I'm just going to give you some of the highlights, sort of a summary of last year's work of the Planning Commission. During our 11 regularly scheduled meetings and 3 special work sessions, we considered 11 conditional use hearings, which are listed in page 3 of Denise's report. And those included permits for food trucks, reapprovals for Yellow Spring Brewery South House, the Trailtown Brewery, the Miami Township Fire and Rescue's new station, and an extension of the Yellow Springs Home Inc.'s planned use development for the senior housing. We also began in August considering the permits for applications for transient guest lodging, and between August, when that became a conditional use, and the end of the year, we approved 1 more of those, and I believe there are 47, I think that's right, that are currently transient guest lodges operating in the village. We made, as you guys are probably aware, on Village Council, 25 map and text amendment recommendations to the Village Council, which are again detailed in page 4 of Denise's report. The amendment recommendations covered issues such as I mentioned before, junk vehicles, weed ordinance, transient guest lodging, definitions of tiny houses, things like that. We also worked on and made recommendations to the Village Council regarding the comprehensive land use plan, and the members of the Planning Commission have been serving on the steering committee for the comprehensive land use plan as that's been going forward as well. So overall, strangely enough, I've been really, really fascinated by the work that we do on the Planning Commission. I never thought stormwater management and setback variances could be as interesting or as complicated as many of them turn out to be. As I mentioned earlier, tremendous respect for the people that I've served on Planning Commission with, but I also want to give a shout out to the citizens of Yellow Springs who show up and sit through what must seem to them on a lot of occasions just mind-bogglingly tedious meetings, but they're there not only to express their concerns, but to help us make better decisions. And it's really important to hear from them, and so they deserve just as much praise as the members of the Planning Commission for helping us come to what we hope are decisions that are in the best interest of as many people as possible. So, summary of the last year.
Nice summary.
Any questions?
All right, thanks, Frank. Yeah, I want to jump in and say we are always impressed with the work that you guys do. Thanks for your leadership, and I know you guys are dealing with a ton of stuff. I guess I want to make a pitch for, I know that, sometimes there are some complaints about how council and planning commission are not coordinating as well as we should. And I would just encourage you to poke us, about things that we should, be, more collaborating on. Because I know sometimes we don't always think about some of the, PC implications of what we're doing. And I guess I just want you to know that council wants to, have a strong relationship, so.
Thank you.
Here, here.
Yeah, it's an amazing report, and, the other thing is this small section on economic sustainability work really kind of brought home for me that I think we are making the right decision with Economic Sustainability Commission hiatus and making sure that we have the connection between the economic sustainability work that comes out of planning and as the YSDC evolves. So thank you for that.
Cool. Anything else? All right.
All right.
You're
Thanks,
awesome.
Frank.
Thanks,
you
man.
all.
Thank
All
you.
right, appreciate it. Okay, so we are at the point on the agenda where we would love to hear from citizens about anything that's not on the agenda. We ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes, and keep in mind that we are talking about the jail tax initiative right after this. So that would not be a citizen concern a topic. So, are there any other topics that people would like to speak about? Mitzi?
Well, I'm sorry that he just left, but having been involved with 2 variances, I just would like to express my appreciation to the fairness of our planning commission and the amount of questioning they're doing to be fair to all citizens. And the other thing I'd like to share is you had mentioned, Lisa, about the Gaunt Fund. The McKee Foundation and group has been working with the elementary on a fundraiser for I guess it'll just be this month, the month of Black History Month. And so they are taking an active part in trying to raise money to help support the community and the community's efforts.
That
Thanks, Nancy.
you're on an important point, because I understand a certain young man related to a person on this podium spent hours cleaning, raking leaves, and then gave all of his earnings to that fund.
Wow. All right. Any other citizen concerns? Okay. So we have no old business. We're going to move on to new business, and we're going to talk about the new jail construction task, and Josue is going to kick that discussion off.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. This sales tax increase is a 0.25% increase proposal to raise what is about $7 million per year over 10 years, so about $70 million, to build a new facility that would hold 500 beds. At the last council session, there were a few questions around the incarceration of individuals due to their inability to pay their bonds. So we reached out to the county and the judge, Ron Lewis, and we have the following information that's also included in your packet. Regarding the question on 50% of incarcerated inmates are in jail because they are poor and can't pay their bonds. I have a response from Major Keller, who runs the facility, and it's indicated the following, and I'll read from his statement. 45% of inmates in Greene County are sentenced felons. 27% are sentenced on misdemeanor charges. Of the remaining 28% incarcerated, a majority of those are on probation or parole violations and have no bond. In addition, 46% of the jail population are released in less than 3 days. Those statistics alone do not support the idea that half the population is in jail because they are poor and can't pay their bond. And the statement continues. The second question that we had, what are the plans for drug treatment and rehabilitation? And his response was, the sheriff and commissioners have agreed that the best option to expand the current drug and mental health treatment is to use the adult detention center as a rehabilitation center for drug and mental health services. This type of center will give the judges an alternative sentencing option that is not currently available. Many of those sentenced to jail whose crimes were related to drug dependency or mental health issues could be sentenced to a treatment in a much more conducive environment than jail. The Mental Health Recovery Board, the Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services Board, and the TCN have all been involved in discussions to plan for this concept and are ready to move forward as the Sheriff's Office vacates the facility. In addition, we have met with the Greene County Judge, and they too are encouraged with the option of having this alternative sentencing path to help provide the necessary treatment. The final statement is, we don't need more bed space. If they build 500 beds, they would just fill them. His response to this was, and I'm quoting, again, this concept is it's not supported by the current facts and trends, but it also not understanding of the current classification issues and how additional beds alleviate those problems. First, the total combined bed space for the two facilities is 382. The average daily population for the past three years was 311. This fact alone does not support the concept of more beds for more people. The goal with the new facility is not more beds for more people, but rather more beds for housing inmates appropriately based on their classification, needs, vulnerabilities, and programming. And that's the end of the responses to the statement. We have also received communications from other residents, and they're included in the packet. Before you, there's a 2-page document that explains provides answers to some of the commonly asked questions. And there's also a letter from Cindy Powles indicating their work on the jail and other ways of getting involved. And I understand she's here in the audience and may also speak on the matter.
Okay.
And that's the introduction.
Thanks, Josue. So the other thing I want to add is I got the impression after our last meeting that there was appetite from council to write a letter to the county commissioners and to county leadership to highlight some of the things that should be thought about that may lead to some better solutions or responses. But I will say, kind of being tasked with writing that letter, that I've heard so many different things. I haven't gotten clarity around what that letter should look like. So what I want this discussion to be about is hearing from citizens about what they want from their elected officials, and also from fellow council members about, where we're at. And I did say at the last council meeting that we needed to have a discussion about what we were gonna do. There was talk about, do we pass a resolution? Do we write a letter? Or do we do nothing? And so I think that's what this discussion is gonna be about at this point. And I know there are some folks that would like to speak to that. So I guess I'd like to open it up to citizens first, and then I do want to hear from council members as well. So.
And can I just say
Yes.
before we start, we do have our new council rules and procedures in gear. So if you can state your name and your village affiliation when you come up, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, Judith Hempfling. Hi, you guys. So what's interesting about Major Keller's, I think that report needs to be rebutted. Those numbers were not in the HDR report. which was November 29, 2018. The report said that 67% of the people in the jail are there pre-sentenced. It's a little over the national average. This is from Ellis Jacobs, who couldn't be here tonight. In 2015, he had an email exchange with DeMajor Keller, and back then, Keller wrote that that we don't collect that information, so I'll only have to, so he wasn't actually able to give that information to Ellis. And Ellis commented that since there's now a big national and even at the state level discussion about bail reform or the end to cash bail, the fact that they weren't tracking that. So we're curious how, you know, here at the last minute, it wasn't in the most recent report, but here at the last minute, all of a sudden, here's the numbers. I just wanted to say that we do know that nationally, we are incarcerating 5 times more than the next democratic industrialized country. We incarcerate more people than China, which is an authoritarian government. We know that we incarcerate way too many people, and we know that Greene County is not leading the way for reform. The group that has organized that Bomani organized here in town is going to be campaigning strongly against this tax. We feel that if they get the extra beds, that the kind of reforms that need to take place, there will be no pressure to do that. Also, in terms of the mental health facility, the current newer jail, which was rehabbed in 2016, the thought that that is going to be now a mental health treatment place, it's not set up correctly. Kate Leviscant, who's in the field of mental health, says there have been, if any, no conversations as far as some major people in the Greene County mental health system about what that would look like. So this is kind of, you know, an idea in somebody's head, but there's not actually anything written, any plan, you know. So, but I also wanted to just add, and then I'll be finished, that it's something I don't think any of us thought of before, and I'm really glad council's willing to write a letter. It strikes me that on an issue as important as this, where we intersect very strongly, our police department does, with Greene County justice system, that municipalities should be weighing in, and we should think of weighing in around these kind of proposals. I know in the past, you know, you don't want to step on the toes of some other, you know, elected body, but this is, we are all Greene County citizens, and our municipality has, you know, a strong relationship and is relying on what's going on over there for, you know, people that are ticketed or by our own department, so our own police department. So anyway, it's something for us, I think, to be thinking about in the future as well. And obviously, people need to be willing to help with thinking about the reforms we'd like to see in the county. Thank you.
Thanks, Judith.
I would just like to say, given that it looks like we have a number of people who probably want to speak, and I'd really like us to keep to the 3-minute limit. 3-minute limit.
Okay.
Please.
Pat DeWeese, resident of the village, and I did send a memo to the council, so I won't try and repeat everything. And I'm not going to get into the weeds about the numbers, but as Judith said, we've had, including an email sort of history that Ellis has kept of communication about the fact that the records are really poorly kept. And it's surprising that he all of a sudden was able to come up with this. Maybe he could, I don't know. I really don't know. As a citizen of this country, I've been very concerned about our over-incarceration in jails and in prisons, and I've thought about it, read books about it, and so on. So it is a concern, and I am part of the Greene County Citizens Against the Giant Jail tax. But I do want to say, and this is why I wrote the memo, that regardless of whether the tax passes or not, I would anticipate that it's not up to me as a citizen to be caught up on all of the reform initiatives and all of the current tools and all of the things that are out there, and I know they're out there. I mean, why was the entire state of Florida able to do away with cash bail bond? How did they do that? And what did that cost? There's a whole lot of stuff that's happening right now because we have a bipartisan, as I mentioned, trend to, because of the cost of it, among other things, and the damage it does to communities, to reform, to reduce populations in jail, reduce populations in prisons. There's lots of ideas. So what I would expect is that elected officials and law enforcement professionals know these things and study them and understand them and put them forward. And I think the idea that, oh, by the way, our whole group is in support of getting rid of our horrible jail. It's really terrible. But, you know, how long will it take to build another jail? And why would we have a much bigger jail? And how would that help our current inmates who are suffering? And we've been in this quote-unquote crisis since, what, 1989? Under a federal order. So, I mean, like, all of a sudden now it's a huge, huge crisis. It's been a crisis for quite a while. So what I would propose, and I think I did say this in the memo, is that part of the letter that gets, I support a letter going forward for all the reasons that were discussed, and I would ask that letter to the commissioners, regardless of whether the tax is passed, that we create some kind of countywide, I'm not going to say task force, we're going to create something that, with experts, that really looks at what other communities, and we're talking Washington, D.C., you know, we're talking the state of New Jersey, I mean, big initiatives, including our own Republican governor's initiative to give more money to public defenders. There's lots happening, a lot happening. So the idea of what we would do is do the same old thing, only bigger, is not acceptable to me.
Thanks, Pat.
Brian, I would like to add something to the data.
Yes.
We had a conversation with Judge Ron Lewis today, and he recognized that some of the data is not being captured, and he's leading an effort to track the bonds attached to every case in municipal court. So
I appreciate that, but there are 2 or 3 other categories that need to be tracked. Like, I mean, I won't go through all that. I'm not the total expert, but there's a number of them, and we could, you know. But again, why would citizens need to do this? I mean, minor probation offenses. I mean, I could come up with a number of reasons why people should not be in jail pre-trial, or maybe not at all.
Right. I shared some of those values with you. I just wanted to make that point that we engaged the judge, Ron Lewis, who is an advocate of some of social justice reform, and he's working on data, better data collection and gathering to properly report things.
Great, great.
Robert Leibcap, resident. Some of us have seen the film Field of Dreams. And if we remember the film, there was the famous line, if we build it, he will come. If we build a bigger jail, we're going to fill it. Not just the $70 million in new sales tax that will have an impact on our economy in Greene County, on the residents themselves, but the ongoing maintenance cost and overhead cost of running that jail beyond that will be an imposition on taxpayers for the entire future. The bigger jail seemed like a great idea. That's come out of the last century. If you were to open a time capsule, somebody would say, law and order, we need to house more prisoners. We don't. The Ohio Supreme Court says we don't. In some ways, the Ohio Assembly is saying, how do we review, how do we look at mandatory minimum sentencing? How do we look at the cash bond system that's going on right now? Who we're jailing right now are the poor, the ill, and the addicted. That's who's filling our jails. And to build more beds without a firm commitment to more progressive, more thought-through treatment for the prisoners seems just an invitation to abuse that same population even more. We can do better. Right now, who's going to benefit from it is going to be indirectly the private industry system that has profited from bigger jails across the country. It'll follow through on that. It'll send the wrong message to our communities where we need to build healthy responses to the courts. And it's hard to build on what has been said before. But bigger's not the answer. There's century solutions that can temper the demand for bigger jails. I don't want politicians 5 years from now to explain to me why they built the last giant jail in Greene County, Ohio. It's not necessary at this point without further commitments to what we're going to change in the justice system. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Amani?
Bomani Moyen, the resident and convener of the group, Greene County Citizens Against the Giant Jail Tax. So I want to just kind of reiterate what everyone else has said. I don't have a whole lot to add either, but I'm reading from the HDR assessment that the commissioners paid $177,000 to secure. And on page 11, it discusses other jail population management tools to consider. And of those, the list reads creating an on-scene mental health crisis response team to assist law enforcement, develop a sobering center, create more emergency mental health beds to divert those in crisis from jail, develop a uniform pretrial screening tool that can be used by both municipal courts, develop pretrial services that would include a reporting center, urinalysis, service referrals, automated reminders of court dates, mental health case management. Expand inmate program opportunities within the jail to meet psychosocial needs of inmates, consistent with risk needs responsivity framework. Expand coordination of community providers, provide reentry discharge planning, provide pre-release step-down opportunities, provide more robust reentry services in the area of employment, housing, and health care. I also want to point out that there were several options offered, and I won't go through all the numbers, but the one they chose extrapolated out a population estimate 30 years from now, and that's how they arrived at 500 beds. There's other estimates that call for 400. And lastly, I would like to say, and this is from the assessment, of concern is if the county builds a new jail, will stakeholders be less vigilant in managing the jail population? This has been seen in other counties after jails with larger capacity are built. Generally, the increases with the ADP, whatever that is, increases the average daily, whatever, increases with more beds available. The question is, will this happen in Greene County? And that's one of our biggest concerns is, and this is a trend across the country and many counties, that when they build these larger jails, the incentives for managing the population is lost, and the jails become filled quite quickly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bomani. Cindy?
Cindy Powell, Yellow Springs resident. I'm speaking on not only my own behalf, but also for Greene County Voices, who prepared the flyer that was in your packet. I and many of the members in the group have been involved in this project for the last 2 years, following the commissioner's progress. And many of the questions that have been raised today have been addressed and have been considered and have been put into place. the following paragraph after the last one Bomani read said, to help the county continue to manage jail population, the consultant team recommends the establishment of a criminal justice coordinating committee. Such a group is in place and is looking at all of these issues. There were many meetings during the needs assessment project with TCN talking about not only behavioral and addiction issues, but mental health issues. So yes, those people were involved. I had a lot of issues with the needs assessment process myself, but I was a lone voice speaking at the commissioners' meeting. If we had had more community involvement and more input at that time, maybe things would have come out a little differently. I'm not a fan of 500 beds, but this is a 30-year projection. This isn't something that they're going to fill in the next 2 years after it's built. Sheriff Fisher and Major Keller have both committed themselves publicly several times to transformational activities, to having space in the jail for assessment, for having rooms for classrooms, for treatment, for pre-release counseling and training, room to segregate prisoners by their categories, which they cannot do now. If this levy is voted down, and we start back at square one, the last 2 years of planning and needs assessment and discussion will be lost, and those people who are currently forced to be incarcerated in the deplorable conditions of the 50-plus-year-old jail will still be in those conditions. We can continue that for another 2 years while we debate these things, or we can move forward and make sure that the new facility does handle transformative and transformational programming by putting the pressure on them. The levy does not say this is what we are going to build. The levy says we are going to design and build. And now is our opportunity to put that pressure on the county to make sure that those 500 beds are distributed appropriately and that those extra facilities and extra treatment options are available. Turning the ADC into a treatment center alone will enormously benefit the county and all of those people who need beds and who are turned away because we simply don't have room. Those plans, no, they are not specifically in place yet because the levy has not passed. They cannot reuse the ADC while it is currently occupied. But those things have all been discussed. And anyone who has attended the commissioners' meeting in the last 2 years and followed this program as I have would be aware of that. I would hope that if you do write a letter, you take those things into account. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Hi, folks. I'm Kellyanne Tracy, and I'm a member of the community. I want to speak about the mental health and the alcohol and addiction treatment because it's really touched my life and the lives of my family members. We do know that many that are incarcerated are suffering from that. We do know that incarceration itself is not a method of treatment. We also know that many promises have been made time and time again for our nation to seek alternative treatments and to provide that, and it's just not happened. Many of those that are incarcerated are in fact suffering without the ability to have health insurance, or if they have health insurance, it's in fact Medicaid. I've been in the health finance for over 40 years, and I can tell you that finding a Medicaid facility is few and far between, and the beds are even fewer and far between. That has to be our priority. Saying that it's going to be a priority and it being a priority is two different things. We need to see action first on those things before we see more beds in our jail. I also think that it's behooving of us to take our leaders, such as Laura Curlis, who has direct experience in those jails, and listen to what her advice is on this, because she's been at the ground where this is all happening. And I believe that us listening to her and listening to other members of our community that have that experience is what's most important. And I appreciate you guys addressing that and addressing the needs of our mentally ill and our suffering, and to vote no, support a vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'm Franklin Halley. I'm a village resident. I'm also a psychiatrist, and for over 20 years I've worked at TCN, nearly 20 years as medical director. So I've had a lot of, I will say though, I do not work for TCN right now. I've just recently left them. I'm moving on to another position, so I'm not speaking for TCN. Okay. But I've had many interactions with clients, and both substance use clients, mentally ill clients in the jail system, and worked with full-time substance use and mental health staff that have been working in the jail, of which TCN, in my tenure there, has always had a minimum of 2 full-time staff there. So there's a lot of business in the jail. I think everyone would agree there's a huge number, huge percentage, large percentage, very substantial, of individuals with mental health needs and chronic issues, and for sure with substance use issues that are in the criminal justice system and end up in jail. I don't know what they're going to do with the ADC. You know, to me it sounds really great that turn it into a treatment center. That takes, it's needed for sure. I'm not really aware of substantial discussion or planning for that to happen. It would take significant funding, significant staffing, and I guess I would task or challenge you all as council members to support robust mental health and addictions treatment as part of whatever is going forward with the jail levy or tax, whatever it is. And I think that anybody, and the other thing I want to say is anybody who's been in the jail, and even the sheriff's offices next door, they need new facilities. I mean, the jail is not a humane place, I think, for anybody to be in, whether they have any medical condition at all. And the sheriff's offices appear to be a bit of a dump to me. So I think everything runs its courses, and they're going to have to do something. So.
Thanks, Franklin.
So just a couple of points. Eric Miller, village resident. The group, the Greene County Citizens Against the Giant Jail Tax group, does not oppose a new jail. We oppose the current plan for the new jail. I think there's an understanding within the group that the jail, especially the downtown jail, is inhumane, inadequate, obsolete. The consultant report that the county hired the consultants to assess the need and course of action made several recommendations on what kind of facility the county needs. And it was sort of a last-minute addition, apparently, according to our reading of different iterations of that report, a last-minute choice to add the 500 bed option. There were several other options in that report that were actually, preferred recommendations of the consultants that were smaller and more adequate and did not do away with the ADC. Just if you look at the numbers, 100% of the money that they're talking about raising goes into a building. So it's not talking about any new programs. It may be building buildings that could house programs, but there's no money associated with that. If you look at the average daily population in the jails, by the sheriff's own report, it's approximately 310. Their current bed number is, if I recall correctly, 386. So there's a whole almost 25% wiggle room if they were to, fully populate the jail. If you add an additional, if you go to 500, and if they do not remove their current practice in terms of numbers that they incarcerate, you're going to 60% room for more people That, and they talk about it in terms of, looking at a 30-year timeline. You don't build 60% extra capacity for what happens 25 years from now. In terms of what our population will be doing in that time, in terms of aging and economics, we don't know what that is. So it's really, I think it's a hidden plan to increase the population. And my time's up.
Thanks, Eric. Okay. All right, go ahead, Sandy. All right. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're getting pretty full with information that we need. So, let's try to tighten it up a little bit. So, yeah.
Maybe if people have something different to say.
Yes, I just have some brief comments. My name is Sandy King, and I'm with the Greene County Citizens Against the Jail Tax, the giant jail tax. I just want to say that I feel really strongly that this is our opportunity to really be who we say we are in this area, in this town, and we can make a difference, because mass incarceration is a nationwide problem, but this is what we can do on this local level to work with the cash bail, to work with a building we already have, possibly as an alternative, the ADC building that was built in I think 2000 or 2001 or something like that. So it's a fairly new building comparatively, and there's a lot of unused bids there. Why not renovate that and make that a part of the new jail? Everybody, as has been said before, nobody is against not having the jail moved or having a new facility. Nobody here is not about that. But we do need to vote no on this particular way of handling the whole situation. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, Sandy. Okay. So, I mean, ultimately, obviously, you guys are all preaching to the choir. And, I wish that, we could, realistically have a bigger impact. But that being said, I agree with everything I've heard around opportunities and a message that we can put out there that I think we can get behind. I think council is committed to this, and I also think we can push it out there, not just like a passive letter, but if we're going to write a letter, we're going to put it out there, and we're going to, make our position known. So, I mean, I don't want to be presumptuous, but is there consensus from council that we should articulate a message?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, this was great input for me because I've been tasked to be that letter writer. But as Judith knows, I've been struggling with just what's the right way to articulate this message so it doesn't just fall on deaf ears. And I really appreciate understanding a little bit more from where everybody's coming from to make sure that what we put out there is not just crazy Yellow Springs or whatever, because there's a lot of stuff that's really important. And again, the opportunities around this is great. And Cindy, again, your perspective on this is really important too. I appreciate what you said about, we should have all been involved in this conversation early on to steer it differently. But we, I think, have some great opportunities here. So what I can say on behalf of council is that, we care extremely about this, and we will put out a message that I want to vet with you guys in the next week that we can ultimately all get behind, and again put it out there to really highlight all the things that need to change around incarceration and around the justice system, and totally in line with what our value system is about. And that is not just political speak. I mean, this is something I care a lot about. I think Judith can attest to that. But I just wanted to make sure we got it right. So thank you for the input. And again, we want to share our communication with the group to make sure we're hitting the right points. And this is also something that I want us all to sign off on, not just me. So anyway, so thank you very much. And yeah, thanks for coming. All right.
I
and-
just
yes.
want to say, this needs to be more than just a letter. I mean, we can write a letter and send it, and so I agree, a lot of good things have been said, a lot of important points have been made. How to create a letter that's an opening, and then that there's follow-up. And it's not necessarily that council is going to be following up. I mean, maybe there's a role for council, I don't know. But it seems to me that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, whether it passes or doesn't pass. A lot of work that needs to be done. So how to create something that supports work being done and then having people do the work. That's where the rubber hits the road.
All right, thanks everyone. And feel free to stay for the manager's report.
Yes.
Or not.
We have a lot of exciting things to report on, so. Ellis Pond project, we've got a couple tree issues.
Got photos.
Enticing.
Yes, John Bryan Center, some renovations, improvements. All right, I'll get started.
It's not working.
Not working. All right, a couple project updates. Ellis Pond project, both the equipment and pedestrian bridge have been installed. The work on the ongoing of the grading of the access to the equipment bridge, that's ongoing. This task is weather dependent, and we just haven't had the right weather to grade that.
And, sorry, but in terms of
Yeah,
conversations.
we still have a meeting going on.
Yeah, and then just keep in mind, we can't close the door, so if you are talking, it'd be great to take it downstairs. Thanks.
Okay, so that's weather dependent. We hope to get it as the rain clears up a bit. We're working on dedicating the bridge to an individual who has made significant contributions to the village. We're working with the tree committee and welcome council feedback on this, so love to follow up with folks offline. Sanitary sewer cleanouts and visual inspection of select lines is complete. It's a light read. I've got a hard copy right here.
Can I correct you? It's not complete, just
Oh.
14,000 feet is done.
I
out of 30 miles.
Yes, I should correct that the entire sewer system has not been visually inspected. The select lines, it's complete, and and that's important to point out that we do not have a complete assessment of everything underground, but of select lines. So these are primarily 8-inch and 10-inch lines. Thank you, Johnny. But we look forward to scheduling a special report. Just earlier, we were speaking with Brian about this and maybe squeezing it into a work session because there's a lot of great content here to get through. Tree trimming. We've had street trees. We've had Great Tree Service has been doing ongoing work on the right-of-way, clearing branches that are hanging over roads and over sidewalks. Arbor Care is finishing the punch list on the electric line clearing of Section 2. I want to point out that we recognize that this work has caused concerns for many residents and apologize for the inconvenience. However, the tree trimming around power lines is critical to ensuring the reliability of electricity service to residents. It reduces power outages and reduces cost. Additionally, tree trimming of branches hanging over roads is necessary to ensure free passage on the roads up to 25 feet in height for school buses, waste pickup trucks, fire trucks, and other service vehicles. We want to get the message out that we appreciate all the feedback we received, and I just want to reassure the residents that if we did not need to do these things, we would not be doing them. We do not like to be on the receiving end of harsh criticism and to some point insulting criticism of what we're doing. We're doing it because we want to ensure the safety of our community, and we're doing the best work that we can.
Can I ask you, so it definitely sounds like people have been complaining because we're trimming trees.
Well, we're trimming trees that they consider their trees, but they are on the public right of way. So they're trees really on public property and have overgrown trees with branches hanging over the road. They're just a risk, or hanging over power lines that need to be trimmed back.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering if there's more we could do as an educational piece to this up front, so that people maybe put out something in the electric, when people get their bills or something.
And the inserts, yes.
Something, and on our Facebook page, something that lets people know this is what we're doing, and it's our job to do it, and it's not your tree when it hangs over.
Yes,
It's
we're
not
gonna
on
be
your
more proactive this time around with getting the word out, and not just on social media, on our website, but including the paper. I've had interactions over the last week that someone's asking about the trees, and I said, well, do you watch council meetings? I'm like, well, my TV is not connected. Well, we have a YouTube channel. Well, I'm not on the internet. If it's not on the paper, they're just not reading it. So there are things that we need to get into the paper to ensure that folks get it. So we're gonna work on things on our end to spread the message much further than we have. But we wanted to highlight this meeting to the point that we hear you, we care about the trees as well. And it's also a way to preface the next tree trimming section or announcement that we have. There are 2 trees that we need to remove. There's one behind Keith Alley that's really, it's got a big hole in the middle. It's a risk to property and life if that thing falls over, and we have to remove it. We've connected with the tree committee, and they gave us their blessings that the tree should be removed. We also have a tree right here at John Bryan Center that's an invasive tree that also needs to be removed. And we have the blessings from the tree committee that it's okay to remove that big invasive tree.
I just have one more comment.
Yes.
This Saturday, when the Repair Cafe was happening, I walked downtown and I noticed they had these little sandwich board, like, different places. And then they had them here. And I went, wow, and there was something in the paper. I felt like they did a really effective job of letting people know that this thing was happening. So maybe that's the kind of thing. Maybe if we had some boards that we put up in a neighborhood before a tree and that says different things, that to alert people in the neighborhood.
Right. No, that's a good idea.
Different ways of doing it.
Right, and it's happening now, right?
Yeah.
Like they see it, and yeah. Okay. All right. We have pole replacements along Dayton Street, 6 poles. We're waiting for AT&T and cable to transfer their lines. We've completed our work. We've got a couple projects at the John Bryan Center. We'll be doing floor waxing on February 25th, so we'll have to close the youth center at 5, but it'll reopen the following day with regular business hour. We've got some painting inside and outside taking place in March. We'll have some concrete repair, gym repairs, back hallway repairs, carpet repairs, and ceiling tile being replaced. The Vernay cleanup, I've included a summary that we've been carrying over for a couple reports now. The new updates to report is that the EPA was on site on February 4th and 5th to monitor work taking place at the Vernay site. This work included soil sampling and delineation and testing of the hotspots that are scheduled for excavation and removal. The administration and EPA, we held our meeting on the 29th, which I've reported previously, and we're still waiting to hear back from the EPA on the memos that have been submitted by TRC and Vernay. The administration and members of the Environmental Commission Subcommittee met with the EPA project manager on February 5th. The administration feels reassured that remediation of the Vernay property will be conducted at a standard exceeding the minimum standard and will include protective factors that ensure the safety of our residents and the environment. Next meeting with the US EPA project manager is scheduled for February 27th. The administration updates. The administration has formally released the approved RFQ for legal services for the village. The announcement has been distributed to law firms, the Ohio Municipal League, the Ohio Municipal Attorneys Association. A pre-bidders conference was scheduled for today, the 18th, at 10 a.m. in room A and B. We had 4 law firms show up to attend the pre-bidders conference. And we had a good engaging session this morning. Police updates. In the month of January, had 172 calls for services. We had a couple critical incidents, the double homicide and unexpected death of Daryl Dewar, the bus driver for Yellow Springs Schools. Juvenile brought a knife to the Greene County Learning Center and was apprehended without further incident or injury. Officer Birch conducted a presentation at the high school regarding cyberbullying. Sergeant Watson and Officer England personally handed out Valentine cards and treats to every student at Mills Lawn School. Every card was personally signed by an officer or dispatched with a personal note, so it's very, very sweet. Snowstorm that resulted in 3 accidents. You know, we've had a storm that had created bad weather conditions and caused accidents around town. We have submitted an invoice for $28,150 in damages associated with the January 25th car crash that took out 2 power poles along Corey Street. We expect the insurance company to reimburse the village for those damages. If not, we have Plan B. Attaches the 2020 plan for Farming Village-owned properties. The Safe Routes to School project is ready to move into the request for proposal process. The administration will release several RFPs for design and engineering work for the project. The updated project, we've updated a project where the project budget, where we've changed the allocation of the state funding solely to construction. If you recall, the Safe Routes to School project is over $600 in total. The state is contributing $400,000. The village has to cover the additional $200,000+. In order to streamline the process and make it easier for all the parties involved, we've decided to allocate the funding from the state all into construction. By doing so, we will be solely responsible for securing the bids for all the other projects. If we did it, the combining our funds, if we share the cost, then both we and the state will have to be involved in the RFP process, the bidding process, and it would just extend the process. There will be more people to review it, and there will be different list of companies that will bid. So we thought that by doing this reorganization of the expense, that we could expedite the process.
Is that a Safe Routes to School project or
Yes.
something else?
Safe Routes to
Because Safe
School.
Routes to School doesn't have any match. So I'm a little bit confused.
We're talking about the sidewalks from Dayton Street down.
Okay,
down,
well, that's
down-
not Safe Routes to School. So that's, but anyway, I mean, so maybe that.
Limestone or Dayton Street?
It's on Limestone from Dayton Street down to South Walnut
That's
Street.
safe, right? Routes to school, isn't it?
Okay, well, we can talk about that later. But Safe Routes to School doesn't normally have a match, so.
Okay, but this is the project associated with the sidewalk going from Dayton Street down to South Walnut along Limestone. That's this project. That's the project we're talking about.
Okay. We'll take a look at that, yeah.
Okay. Okay, also included under this report are the following reports. We have the commission budget report, the utility roundup program report, and the monthly financial reports, and I'll get into those just after my comprehensive land use plan update. As you know, we've released the open house documents to a virtual open house, so folks can see the PDF files, provide commentary. Marianne, I would check on those issues that you pointed out earlier to ensure that the website is working. We have included a memo on the progress of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan project in this report. The current survey that's up on the open house, on the Sustainable Yellow Springs website, will be open through February 21st. Then there will be an additional survey that would be posted as a follow-up to the data that we've already received. Okay, any questions on that?
So are we doing another Facebook post about that?
Yes, we will do. We're also in conversations with the Yellow Springs News about doing a special edition or insert to do a summary of the comprehensive land use plan, and that's one to provide a more complete update as the work is in progress, and also to drive participation at the next open house, which is being scheduled over the next couple days. The selecting of the date will happen over the next couple days. Did that answer your question? Okay. All right, so the commission budget reports included for your review. We've had $30,000 appropriation. We spent $409.92, so there's $29,590.08 available. On the utility roundup report, for the month of January, we had $566.96 in revenue, and we had 0 applications for assistance, which we think that's good because folks are not in need or not facing this connection that they need the financial assistance to keep their utilities on. So the remaining fund balance for the utility roundup program is $8,407.09. The next Thursday event is March 12th, when we're looking for volunteers to help out at our table. We thank Brian for his assistance at the last Thursday, and we hope Brian or other council members can join us at the next one.
See, what is that date?
March 12th. It's a Thursday. Also attached is the council financial report summary for the month of January. We had, for this month, we had revenues totaling $813,049.27, and we spent $922,449.85. You know, and it's common that we have months that fluctuate. We have more revenue than expenses, or more expenses than revenues. So we expect to be on target. We started the month with a beginning balance of $8,869,503.50. With all the expenses and the encumbrances that we have, we are ending the month with $3,970,496.90. Just want to point out that this encumbrance that seems very high, it's $4,789,606,000, are because we encumber a lot of the expenses we're going to have for the year. That's power cost primarily, and other obligations that we have. So they're loaded up. We open a PO and encumbered, commit those financial resources. Any questions on the budget report? Okay. Also including reports of the 2 letters from the tree committee regarding their support for the removal of the tree on the Keith Alley and the invasive tree that's right here at the John Bryan Center. I've also included a copy of the invoice that we have sent to the insurance company for the damages over $28,000, and the farming plan. It's also included there. Any questions?
All right, thank
Okay.
you. Judy?
I don't have anything in particular, unless you've got any questions about anything in front of you. BZA is meeting twice this month, once for a retreat to go over Duncan factors and once to hold a hearing. And then I included some dates and events from Greene County Regional Planning for your attention.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we need people to take those positions for the census, so they're still looking for people to run that, so, and they will pay you. All right, highlights related to boards and commissions.
I have a few.
Yes.
For Art and Culture Commission, we're continuing to recruit members for Art and Culture Commission. And it may be an interesting time to begin because we're kicking off 2 new projects along with Josue and Johnny. One, murals at Gaunt Park Pool, which is related to the overall Gaunt project, but a village project. And also beginning some plans around painting the fire hydrants. And we have some really cool ideas, so it's a fun time to join. Other things I've mentioned, but the Art and Culture Commission needs a new name. We get in these confusing situations with the Arts Council, where people don't understand the ACC versus the AC and whose role is what, and commitments are made. There's even been some situations where money was transacted. It's very confusing. So we need to come up with a different name other than Art and Culture Commission that still conveys the meaning of what we do without making it sound just like the Arts Council. So if anyone has any brilliant ideas, let me know. But believe me, it's a weirder problem than it sounds like. But, you know, given that we're focusing more and more on arts activism, and I don't know what we'll recommend, but I'll be bringing something back to council.
All right, anything else?
No.
Okay. Future agenda items.
Have we talked about when we're going to have the work session? That would be an agenda item, I guess, just making that decision.
I need to recommend that the ACC end-of-year report go to April 20th.
Okay. Yeah, let's let Judy coordinate about the work session. We got ACC for April. Anything else?
The reason why, the main reason why I was asking is because I want to decide how to move forward with the conversation that I had with Gina Marie Cox about how we can use that, the foundation to help people make donations to the
Can we
village.
have that as an agenda at an upcoming meeting? Because I'm not clear if I understand whether this is something that's part of the village, some kind of endowment, or if it's something that you're talking about setting up outside of the village that
Well,
could then.
I am not clear about how it would be set up either, and I had asked if you would.
Yeah, talk
work
to
with
Gina
me
Marie. Yeah, I
on
will.
that.
Yeah.
Could I interject? Before you put energy into that, talk to the finance director and the village solicitor. Here's why. The rules about how they have to account for public funds, even if you have a fund at a foundation that is supporting public activities, I think they have to pull that money into their the village accounting anyway. That's number one. Number two is, I think it's too much energy to do what you want to accomplish. Colleen said they can just set up a line item because villages are government entities that the money donated is tax deductible. The village can give them a gift letter for IRS purposes. So it's like.
So we don't need the
You don't
community
need,
foundation.
exactly. You really don't. You just, if you have a project, so, one project I did was a mural. People want to donate to the mural. They just, the city leased the wall and then they paid to get the mural artist.
We'll talk to Colleen. Yeah. Thank you.
And we
Yeah.
have the budget line items. We have the
Yeah, you have
budget
those
line items
line
already.
items.
They're already established, so we can, if someone were to give us a check tomorrow and said, this is for a bridge project at Ellis Pond, we have the budget line items where we allocate that receivable, the money, and we can transfer it internally where we need it to go.
So I like the idea of an agenda item because if we're gonna do that internally, we need to make sure we have the capacity and that we're promoting that. One thing about considering a partnership with the Community Foundation is if they can add some capacity there. Because, I mean, since we started council, 6+ years ago, like this has been talked about, but nothing's ever really happened with it. It was like Lori Asklin that first talked about, we should get some support.
Yeah.
So, to me, the point is how do we action it?
Okay.
So it's fine if we've got the capability, but if we don't have the internal capacity, we should look for a partner.
Yeah, I think it deserves a discussion, looking at different options, and making a decision.
March 2nd?
Pardon?
March 2nd? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that'll give some time for some, some follow-up. Okay, any other future agenda items?
Well, Brian, Planning Commission did vote to recommend that council consider passing a rooster ban. I passed that information on. You can do with it as you will, move it forward, decide you don't want to consider it at all, have it come back at a later point, but that information needed to be passed on to council.
Is there any particular sense about that right now?
I think our first action being a ban is a bit much. I think there's opportunities for, some discussion and airing of all the facts that I'm not sure has happened.
I have a question for Denise. It wasn't exactly a ban that was proposed, is that correct?
I think it was in the sense of something for council to consider. We definitely are gonna, staff is gonna bring with, the police department, it's gonna also bring forward, some changes to the noise ordinance itself. I mean, the noise ordinance just needs to have some things removed from it. The idea of a rooster ban, I mean, from all the conversations that we've had, I've done some research with other communities. Roosters are not particularly necessary unless you are wanting to have your procreation thing. There has been a lot of misinformation out there. Attempts were made with the 2 property owners. I don't want to get too involved in this right now.
We can't get too
Yeah,
involved.
I don't want to get too far in this, but I feel that for Planning Commission's ban, where they're coming from is the fact that we're not sure how else we can resolve this. Perhaps it's just going to be citation. I don't know. That's kind of where I think where they're at. But they just felt something to consider.
Right. I think it's good, thank you. I think it's good to have out there. I think we've got a lot of other priority issues for the next couple meetings. So, I mean, I guess, let's keep it out there, but I don't know.
I think that if the planning commission wants us to look at it, out of respect to the work that the planning commission is putting in, if they want us to look at it, we should look at it at some point.
Sure. I mean, I think we should
Yeah,
put it
I
on
mean-
the list. I just, I mean, I don't see that happening in the next 2 meetings.
Well,
so.
Staff would like to have the noise ordinance come soon.
Okay.
That is on the agenda. That's not.
And
got
if you want to
anything do
talk
with
about
the other.
the roosters as a part of that, you can. I mean, it's in there. It's within the noise ordinance, harboring of birds. So that's why. Staff wants to bring the noise ordinance forward. Okay.
Okay, I think we just need to remember, so we are, at 9:45 right now, and every time we bring up a controversial issue, we're, gonna expect to add 30 to 45 minutes to our meeting when we do have infrastructure and other priorities. So, for example, it was great to talk about the big jail thing tonight, but we can't do that every meeting. So I just think we need to,
Laura,
ahead.
I mean, this is Laura's initiative, but we had a very effective, I think, collaborative meeting about committees, commissions. Everyone was able to attend who was invited, so I'm wondering if that should be on the March 2nd agenda, because we will have met again, and I think we'll have a firm proposal.
Yeah, I think
And
that
it
would
won't
be,
be real long.
yeah, no, I think that would be a
You're
good
not
thing
going
to,
to be here in March.
I will
Right.
be here on the 2nd, but not
Okay.
on the 16th.
So it'd have to be on the 2nd,
Or roll to the 6th.
or roll to the 6th.
okay.
I'm
Yeah, I,
literally in Yellow Springs 5 days in March.
wow.
I'm glad you let us have one of them.
Yeah, I love the idea of talking about the commission committee thing on March 2nd.
All right.
I guess Roosters, I'd like to move forward. So, okay. All right. Anything else?
The
If not, I
t-shirt,
will
right?
entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying cock-a-doodle-doo.
No,
Aye.
no, you didn't.
Aye. Sorry. All right. Thank you. Kevin, I wanted to take a page out of your book.